Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my kitchen studio. It's a very hot day here in Sweden. The heat wave that's been terrorizing Europe is here as well. And I open all my windows here, but it doesn't matter much when it's this hot outside. So I got a little bit of a low energy going, but regardless of that, I'm very excited to announce my number 4 camera. This camera is a very iconic camera, I think, and one that I also laid my eyes on way back. One of those cameras that if you walk to like a thrift store or an auction or something, you see it right away and you just want to own it because you wanted to try it and think it would be a cool experience to shoot. I'm talking about a TLR, and it's my first medium format camera ever actually that I own and shoot. Well, I've shot medium format cameras before, but I haven't owned and shot one myself. So this is the iconic Rolleiflex, and this particular model is the 75T, that stands for Tessar, the lens of the camera. So the Rolleiflex goes way back, and they were produced by a company called Franke and Heidecke that produced stereo cameras back then. And their first early model that looked similar to this one was produced in 1979, and the first automatic one was produced in 1937, I believe. And they became very popular fast. They produced something like 95,000 units and were picked up by famous photographers like Robert Capa, Lee Miller, Roger Schall, and of course one of my favorite photographers, Vivian Maier. They were used as press photography cameras or street photography cameras, like Vivian Maier used her. Just got some coffee. So let's briefly go into some of the specifications of the Rolleiflex T model. It's a waist level viewfinder camera. So you open the viewfinder like this, and you hold the camera like this, and you look down into the viewfinder, and you focus with the knob here on the side. And you get a small magnifier glass here that will let you get more accurate focus, and that works very well in my opinion. What else? It's an f3.5 Tessar lens, as I said. This one doesn't have a functioning meter, and I think the T model wasn't a model that had a meter built in, but I might be wrong. But there are some other models with f2.8 lenses that have an internal meter, but those are much more expensive as well. It uses a lot of nice accessories that I will get into a little bit more later, but it has a original hood looking like this that you just screw on like this. Get some different filters that you just click on like this. And this model uses the Bay 1 filters and accessories, which is important. And they're also a little bit cheaper and easier to get a hold of, which is nice. So using the Rolleiflex is actually a little bit weird in the beginning, as you get the flipped image when you're looking down into the viewfinder. So everything is supposed to be on the right side, it's actually on the left side. So when you move this way, the image moves the other way. That can get a little bit time to get accustomed to, and I don't think I got it down to a T yet, to be honest, but I'm getting used to it, and it's a fun experience when you learn how to deal with it. What else? Well, the aperture and shutter lever here is also a little bit strange to begin with. You actually move both the shutter speeds and the aperture at the same time when you pull this lever up and down. And the way you only move or change the aperture, you have to pull out the knob a little bit and then change it. And so they are interlinked or linked together, and that's also a little bit clunky, but I think that's the way they made a lot of cameras back then. And I have some other cameras that function the same way, and some people consider it a weakness of this camera, especially since the mechanism in here, it's a rubber band helping to control that lever, and that breaks easily over time, sort of gets dry and ruined quite easily. So that's something to be aware of, that you have to be a bit careful when you pull the lever. But if you're careful, I don't think it's a big problem. And the way you shoot an image with the Rolleiflex, you have to turn the film advance lever one full circle. And then you actually cock the shutter by turning it backwards half a circle and then put it here. Then you can take the shot. So if you only advance the film one circle, it won't shoot. You will have to pull it backwards and then cock the shutter, place it here, and then you're ready to shoot. That's also a bit strange in the beginning, and I had some frames that I actually ruined because I didn't know how to do it properly, which was quite annoying in the beginning. But you get used to it the same way as the viewfinder I told you about earlier, so it's not a big problem when you use it a lot. So why do I like the Rolleiflex 75T this much? Well, it's a dream camera to shoot, honestly. I mean, it's magnificent. Just to look at it, it's a dream. But also shooting is a very involving process. And while I've been viewing other medium format cameras like the Mamiya RB cameras and Hasselblads and so on, they're a bit more expensive, of course, so you gotta count that in as well. But just it's the perfect size, I think. I don't want to lug a lot of equipment around, and as I said earlier in another video, the reason for starting to shoot film photography was getting away from the digital shooting, and a part of that is the big cameras and the big lenses and everything, and you can't escape that if you're shooting with the Mamiya cameras and so on. So this is a perfect size, according to me. There are some other models, like the one I talked a little bit about earlier, like that has the f2.8 lenses, the F model, I think it's called. I might get one of those later, but otherwise I have everything I'm looking for in a medium film format camera right here. The shooting experience is a dream. It's a very involving process. I mean, just looking down into the viewfinder and shooting it and turning the knobs and everything. It's a very tactile experience. And the lens, the Tessar lenses, produce some very, very nice images, according to me. And some of my favorite pictures up to date. Some people like the Xenar lens, I think it's called, or the planar lens. It's another lens design that came a little bit later on the Rolleiflex cameras. And I heard some comparisons, or read a lot of comparisons between the lenses and so on. And while the Tessar lens seems to produce a little bit more flare and a little bit more of a retro look, that's also something me personally I'm looking for in film photography. So for me, the lens and the small package and everything makes for the perfect shooting experience and everything I want in a medium format camera. And also it's that type of camera that when you bring it to into a scene somewhere, I can tell you I shot a wedding a few weeks back, and I had been shooting with my Nikon cameras the whole wedding. And I had like 20 minutes left, and I planned this beforehand that I really wanted to use a film camera at the paid job at one point. So I brought the Rolleiflex, and I thought if I get some time over, I will use the Rolleiflex. So I brought the Rolleiflex out, and it just reignited the energy into the scene right away. People wanted to take pictures of me using the camera, wanted to know what kind of camera it was, and still using that type of camera in this day and age. And yeah, it was just a very, very fun conversation piece, and something that they spoke about after the wedding as well. So just a great camera to bring around. Makes people a lot more at ease than some other cameras that you shoot them with. I also think a lot has got to do with that you're looking down into the viewfinder and holding the camera like this. So you're not actually intimidating by pointing the camera at them as you do with other cameras, regular cameras. So that's also something it's a great advantage when you're shooting a portrait of someone to have. So just a really nice camera to bring with you everywhere. So we come to the last segments where I will show you some of the favorite pictures that I've taken with the Rolleiflex 75T. But before I show you that, I got a small announcement, and that's about another camera that I actually forgot to bring into the list. After making the first videos, I just felt that this camera needed to be on the list. I've shot a lot with it the last couple of weeks as well, and I just couldn't find any good reason that it wouldn't make this list. So that camera I will talk a little bit more about after the slideshow, but I will actually share the number 4 spot. So let's look at the slideshow for the images from the 75T. Thank you. So there was a slideshow. Just a quick note about some of the pictures that you saw in the slideshow. I'm sure some of you noticed that it was a bit scratched. And that's actually quite a fun story. When I got the 75T, I didn't know how to load the film properly. So I actually put the film underneath one of the spools. And they came back scratched like that from the lab. And I was devastated at first and thought they were unusable, basically. So, but then after a while, when I looked at the pictures, they kind of gave it a little bit of a retro look anyway, and I liked the theme in the pictures as well. So I kept them and started to like some of them. Kind of grew on me after a while, so that's why I included them in the slideshow as well. After those rolls, though, I learned how to load them correctly, and was just to go over the spool instead of underneath. So just a beginner's mistake on my part. And I was even gonna have the Rolleiflex repaired by a repairman here in Stockholm, and yeah, it was quite embarrassing, to be honest. I thought it was broken, but then he just opened it up and said, yeah, it was nothing wrong with this camera. So he didn't charge me for that, luckily, and just showed me how to load this one and said a lot of people were confused about the different models, and some models being automatic when they loaded the film and so on. So yeah, it's not a big deal, but yeah. So save yourself the embarrassment and look it up properly first before you load it. Just some coffee before I start. Okay, time to introduce this mysterious little camera I was talking about before the slideshow. This little camera is almost like a baby brother to the Rolleiflex, I suppose. And maybe some of you might realize what kind of camera I'm talking about, or which camera I'm talking about. So this is the Rollei35 camera. Look at this beautiful little camera. This little camera was introduced in 1966. This is the original model, made in Germany. Not sure if you can see. By Heinz Waske. Shout out to the channel Analog Insights. They had a very nice review on this one, telling us about the story about how poor Heinz Waske trying to get this camera made, struggling and showing it to different big camera companies like Kodak and other companies around at the time, and none were interested. And then it came to Rollei, and a guy by chance sort of saw the prototype that he brought with him when he started working there, and immediately apparently saw the potential in this little camera and helped him getting it made. So some of the other models that came out after the original 35 Rollei was the S version, then the SE version, T version, and also a TE version. Might be a B version as well, I'm not sure. Not too much of a difference between them, the biggest difference being the lens. So the S, Rollei35S, has a sonar lens. And the TE, for example, was actually the first Rollei that I owned before this one. That had a little bit more refined light meter inside with the LED lights in the viewfinder when you looked into it. That showed you if you got a right exposure. But the difference between the 35 and 35S, the sonar and the tessar lens, I know a lot of people tend to lean towards the sonar lens version and some to the tessar and so on. I owned both the sonar version and this version, and I sold the black-bodied sonar version, which was also a very, very nice camera. And I can't really decide which one I liked the better. Like with the Rolleiflex that I have on my list as well, I like the tessar lens a lot. I think it gives a little bit more of a retro look to the images, which I like a lot. Some say that the sonar lens is more suited for color film. I didn't have a chance to test it that much to make a good comparison, but I think at some point down the lane I will actually get another Rollei5S, because I want to own both versions. But I saved this one, and a cool thing with this sample is that it has a low serial number as well. So it's actually one of the earlier cameras. And I think the lady that sold me the cameras, both the S version and this version, wasn't really aware of the models and the history about them and so on. She just knew, checking on eBay, a general price for it and so on. So after all, looking back at it now, it was actually a pretty good deal for me. And I'm gonna hold on to this camera, I think. Never sell this one. So how to use and operate this little camera, this little quirky camera. It's a bit finicky and quirky to use, the Rollei35. It's pretty well documented everywhere. As I said, it has a light emitter, and it's powered by those old mercury batteries, which are not you're not able to get anymore and not good for the environment and so on. So you can get an adapter, as with many other cameras that uses LR44 batteries, for example. I actually put one of those newer PX625 batteries in there. So the meter works, but I wouldn't trust it, to be honest. It's not really reliable, but I use it just to get a quick first reading, and sometimes it works, and you can trust it, but I wouldn't trust it completely, to be honest. But it's nice to have a meter regardless. To focus, you use zone focusing. So you pull the lens out like this, turn it slightly to make it stuck like that, and then you have the distance here in meters. You turn the lens. You see a few of those ladderings. You can't see that now since I'm in monochrome, but they're painted in red. So those are kind of a snapshot numbers that you can use. It's 2 meters and 6 meters, just to be able to make some quick settings and then take a shot. So when you get used to it and you use zone focus, and it's a very quick camera to use. Works very, very well for street photography and taking snapshots and so on. What else? You get a hot show down here on the bottom, which is quite quirky, a little bit odd. I never used a flash on it, but for the people that wants to, it's nice to have a hot show. You get a lens release button up here. So when you're done shooting, you press the release button and you turn the lens a bit, and then you slide the lens inside the camera body again. You get the film advance here. You can't actually get the lens out and twist until you have advanced the film. So that's a problem a lot of people have when they use the camera the first time. I was very confused about that the first time I used the camera. But you get used to it, and it's not a big deal after a while. And you have the frame counter here on the bottom as well. You see when you advance your film. When you're done with the film and you want to rewind it, you have a little rewind lever here that you just slide up, and then you just use the lever here to rewind the film. It's quite intuitive. It's nothing too difficult when you get used to it. Everything, I mean, it's such a small camera, so everything is crammed into this tight space, but they managed to do that very, very well. You set the aperture here. You get a little button here that you know if it's possible to see, like this. Press in this little button here, and you turn the wheel. You set your shutter speed here, this wheel, and this is a bit finicky, but you have some small wheels here on top that you choose your, if you use a color film or a monochrome, for example, and on the opposite side here you have a similar wheel where you set your ASA. So everything in a very, very tight place. Such a genius little design on this camera. Beautiful camera. Well, I could mention that loading the film is a bit tricky as well to begin with, especially the first few times you do it. You gotta slide the back of the camera down like this, so you have the film compartment there. And once you have sort of put the film inside and advanced it a little bit, you get a flap that you put over to make the film flat against the camera, and then you slide the back of the camera back in place again. Then you turn the lever here downwards to close it, and then you're good to go. It's a bit finicky to begin with, but once you get used to that, like with the other things of this camera, the quirks of this camera, it's not too big of a deal, I think. Then you're good to go. So about some pros to this little gem of a camera. I'd say, first of all, very small, of course. Very, very well built and small, pocketable camera that you can bring with you everywhere. Looks cute. It's lovely to look at. It's got that iconic retro feel and look to it that you love in this kind of camera. Like the Rolleiflex. It's kind of a look that you've seen on in movies and commercials and maybe some magazines and thrift stores and auctions and so on, that you just recognize when you see it right away. Very, very iconic look. The lens itself, the sharpness and everything of it, and the look and feel to the images that you get look very timeless, and especially if you're like walking around town in a worn down area and in like an historic place or whatever, it lends itself to that kind of photography very, very well, I think, to street photography and those kinds of shots. You get a very special, timeless look to the images when you shoot with this camera that I like. I remember shooting the first roll, I was sort of walking a lot of back alleys and streets and so on. I took some shots of a girl skating with sort of a worn down area, and I just thought they looked very cool, those images. So some very nice image quality with this little lens. And I mean, you get pretty surprised when you see the photos that this lens can produce, actually. It's the build of it. You're not scared to get it ruined or scratched or destroyed easily. I wouldn't be that worried putting it in bags and so on. Very, very solid. Get a nice heft and weight to it as well when you hold it in your hands, even being this small. You get some nice accessories as well. The lady that sold me the S version and this version also sent this nice half case that protects the lower part of the camera body. So together with this top part, it's totally protected. Use it as a sling bag, so very easy to carry around and you're not scared to get it scratched. You also get some filters. I bought this one from her as well. I get a couple of different filters for it. Those filters are not that easy to find here in Sweden, at least, but I'm sure you can find it pretty easily on eBay and so on, and those kinds of sites overseas. But I think most of all, it's just a fun camera to use. I remember when I bought it, I took it with me everywhere. Just throwed it in my jacket or my jacket pocket, and brought it everywhere. Very, very fun snapshot camera. Just walking around town and using zone focus and then snap away at stuff. Very, very fun. What more can I say? Yeah, overall a fantastic little companion to bring with you everywhere. So to some cons of this camera. There are not many, but there are some obvious cons that could help others in their choice if they want to buy this camera or not. And I think it's not an easy camera to learn how to take photos with. You really have to learn the camera, how to operate the camera, and especially if you haven't used zone focus before, I think it's that alone is a new thing to master. And so to begin with that, and also how to work the camera with operating the lens and the lens release button, and that you can't pull the lens out before advancing the film and so on. It's a lot of quirks and strange things about this camera that sort of, when you master it, or I can't say I really mastered it yet, but when you get used to it, it gets part of the fun process of taking pictures with this camera as well. So I don't want to scare anyone from getting one of these, because I really think if you're not too lazy or photographer and like to learn new things and master and try new cameras, I think this is absolutely something that I would recommend. But I wouldn't recommend it to a beginner or someone just getting into film photography. That's for sure. But it's one of those cameras that I think when you have used film cameras for a while, I think you should definitely get a Rollei35 camera. Any more cons to mention? So that's it. That was the Rollei35. Shared spot number 4 together with Rolleiflex 75T. I'm glad I managed to squeeze the Rollei35 into the list. It's a very important camera for me, I feel, and it's a camera I will hold on to for a long while, as long as I can. Now I'm gonna show you some pictures that I produced with the Rollei35.